And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Today's review is going to be of Hive and Hive Carbon, which contains the new expansions for Hive. This is a two-player abstract game in which players place insect pieces and move insect pieces in an attempt to surround their opponent's queen bee. The first player to surround the opponent's queen bee is the winner, and the game ends. Hive comes in this small square box, which is relatively unnecessary for the game. Inside of the box come your pieces, which can be contained within this nice small bag. The game is made of very sturdy pieces, which I'll show you in just a moment, but the nice part about this is that it's easy to take on a trip, and playable in pretty much any environment. Additionally, inside of the box come 22 different pieces which are made out of Bakelite, giving them a very sturdy feel. There are 3 pieces each for ants and grasshoppers, 2 pieces each for spiders and beetles, and 1 queen bee, which is the central portion of the game, which players are going to try and surround in order to win. When you surround your opponent's queen, the game ends and you are declared the winner. As mentioned previously, each player is going to have 5 different types of insect. The central portion of the game is going to focus around the queen bee. The queen bee is an insect that can only move 1 space around the outside of the hive. The purpose of the game is to surround your opponent's queen bee with your pieces or their own pieces and to make it unable to move. Once the queen has been surrounded, the game ends and the player whose queen was surrounded loses. Next, we have the ant piece. The ant has the ability to move around the hive any distance, so long as it fits into the spaces. As the ant moves around the hive, it may land on any spot, and you may stop whenever you like. The ant is a very useful piece, and that it has the farthest movement of any piece in the game. In addition to the ant, we have the grasshopper. The grasshopper has the ability to hop over any number of pieces in a straight line. It may not hop over gaps, and if it falls into a gap, it must stop there. The grasshopper is a nice piece for moving over large areas and landing in a space where your opponent may not predict that you might move. The spider piece has the ability to move 3 spaces around the hive, and must move all 3 spaces. This is a difficult piece to use because it's often unpredictable as to where you might want your spider to land, and even the best laid plans can see you putting your spider into a spot that you didn't previously predict. For this reason, the spider is often a good starting piece for the game, as it gets locked up and is unable to move. The beetle piece is an interesting piece in that it allows you to move 1 space in any direction. However, the beetle also allows you to move on top of the hive, locking other pieces in place by standing on top of them. The beetle is often a central focus in the game, as it allows you to prevent your opponent's pieces from moving, and allows you to cover up an opponent's piece, essentially making it your own color. In this manner, you may place pieces around the beetle, even though there might be a black piece underneath. This is useful for getting your opponent's queen stuck in one position and eventually quickly surrounding the queen in order to end the game. To begin the game, the white player will place one of their pieces into the center of the table. This is important to note that no playing surface is required in order to play the game. You can play anywhere. In this game, the white player is going to start by placing a spider into the center of the table. Now, the black player can choose to play any piece off of that spider. This is the only point in the game when the player may place a piece adjacent to a piece of the other player's color. From now on, players must place pieces off of only their own color so that they do not touch the opposing player's colored discs. In this example, white will now play an ant off of its own spider so that it does not touch the black player's beetle. Now the black player will take their turn and play another piece off of their beetle so that it does not touch either of the white player's pieces. The black player also chooses to play an ant. Players will continue placing in this manner until they have placed their queen bee. The queen bee must be placed before the 4th turn of the game. The white player chooses to play their queen bee on turn 3, and the black player will now take their turn. The black player chooses to play a grasshopper. Now it is the white player's turn, and they have an option. They might either choose to play another piece or to move one of the pieces they have already played. In this option, or in this scenario, the player may only move their queen bee, as any other move would break the hive. This is one of the central rules of the game, in that you may never break the hive. The queen bee may move one space, so it could move around the outside of the hive to this position here, or in the other direction between the spider and the ant. However, as this is not beneficial to the white player, he chooses to play a grasshopper next to his queen bee. The black player now takes their fourth turn, in which they must play their queen bee. Now that the queen bees have both been played, and that white has potential moves to make, he may now move either the queen bee, the ant, or the grasshopper. The grasshopper may move from its position and jump over any number of spaces in the hive, landing next to the queen bee. Alternatively, the white player may move its ant around the outside of the hive, stopping at any point where they decide they want to stop. If the white player makes this move, it is now the black player's turn. However, notice that the queen is now locked into position and may not move out without breaking the hive. Black now has options as to whether to move one of their pieces or to place another piece, continuing the addition of their pieces to the board. The game will continue in this manner until one of the player's queen bees has been completely surrounded. We're going to fast forward a little bit and just show you an endgame condition. Now that we've fast forwarded, you can see a close to endgame scenario for Hive. In this situation, the white and the black queen bees are almost entirely surrounded. White has placed a beetle on top of black's queen bee, preventing it from moving. It is currently white's turn, and they can end the game with only one move, simply moving the beetle down into the space next to the queen bee and surrounding it. This would end the game, as black's queen bee has been completely surrounded by both white and black pieces. In this case, white is the winner, as the black queen bee has been completely surrounded. Recently, the publishers of Hive released the game again under the name Hive Carbon, and in this version what they've done is they've not only changed the pieces to be black and white only as opposed to the color pieces you saw in the previous version, but they've also added in a couple of expansions that were released between the original release and the release of Hive Carbon. These are the Mosquito and Ladybug expansions, which can both be purchased separately and are available and compatible with play of the original game. So with that said, let's take a look at what's inside the box for Hive Carbon. The box for Hive Carbon contains yet another bag for holding the pieces, which makes the box somewhat unnecessary. Additionally, it includes a copy of the rules, in both English and French. Inside of the bag are contained the 26 pieces, which now contain the Mosquito and the Ladybug, as well as the original pieces from the base game. Now let's take a look at what's inside of the bag. Hive Carbon contains new tiles, which have a similar design to those in the original game. The difference being that the original game had colored tiles, blue for the ant, green for the grasshopper, brown for the spider, and so on, whereas the new tiles have either white on black or black on white images of the insects. As I mentioned previously, Hive Carbon contains two expansions that have been released since the original game came out. The first of these expansions is the Mosquito expansion, which contains 2 mosquito pieces, one for each player. The mosquito piece, when placed and moved, acts like any other piece that is touching. So in this case, the mosquito has either the properties of a grasshopper or of the queen bee. In this manner, if we move the mosquito, we may either jump it over other pieces, as such, or move it one space around the board. It now has only the properties of the queen bee, as that is only the piece it is touching. The Ladybug expansion, released more recently, is also included with the game. When placed and moved, the Ladybug is able to move 2 spaces over the top of the hive and then down 1 space. It must always move 2 spaces on top of the hive and end its movement at the same level as all of the other insects. This may not be true for beetles, which may end on top of the hive. So when we move the beetle, it may move 2 spaces over the top of the hive, and then must end up down on the main level. Hive and Hive Carbon are possibly my favorite travel games and one of my favorite 2-player games available on the market right now. These are great abstract games. They're wonderful for taking on trips. You can easily play them in an airport or on the beach or at a picnic. And they really only take about 15 to 20 minutes to get through an entire game. Now, I say this even though I'm terrible at the game. My girlfriend frequently beats me. I think I've won a total of 2 games out of dozens that we've played. But really, if you're looking for a nice, quick game to play, you're looking for something cheap, something durable, something you can take with you, Hive is a great investment. That said, Hive Carbon is possibly even a better investment. It includes both of the expansions for a price that is close to or possibly even less than the cost of buying the base game and the expansions. So, if you don't yet own this game, or if you're interested in abstracts that don't take much time and are easy to play, go pick up a copy of Hive. You won't regret it.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.
Yeah?